I think we collect information and knowledge for many months, many years, and then eventually we come to a place where we don't really know how to implement that knowledge in real life. And part of us kind of expects that following the realizations and following the epiphanies that come after we've learned the amount of things that we've learned, that somehow outer reality is going to change as a result of simply us undergoing a realization or an epiphany. But we'll soon find out that it doesn't really work like that. In that, it's not to say that all the information and knowledge that we've accumulated was for no reason. It was actually for a very, very important and great reason. But more importantly, is how are we going to be able to embody the things that we've learned in a way that will actually change our life and more so change the way we experience life as a person? Because that's what it really comes down to. And that's why I titled this video, No Amount of Esoteric Wisdom Will Fold Your Laundry for You, because no amount of that knowledge is going to actually change the circumstances of your life rather than you leaving your comfort zone and taking the sort of initiative action that is required of every single person who wants to live a life that is, under their quote unquote control, but more so under their direction and under their influence. So then I guess the question becomes, how do we implement the knowledge that we've learned and how do we embody it? And, you know, I don't want to sound redundant, but I'll quickly mention the extremely important caveat that it does come down to being able and willing to face discomfort when faced with it. So when the discomfort is present, we can't retreat back into our physical safety. We can't retreat back into our environmental comfort zone, but rather we have to use the knowledge that we've experienced and the knowledge that we've obtained about thinking, about emotions, about life, about relationships, whatever it may be, and we have to apply it. We have to apply it like applying a band-aid to a wound. So even if it feels weird, even if it doesn't feel like it's working, that's not really how it's all going to happen. When you're overthinking and you do that first sort of non-reactive impulse where you pull yourself out of a thought loop and come back into the present moment, you know, it's not going to work miracles on the first attempt. It's not going to work miracles the first time you do it. But then you do it 10, 15, 20, 50, 100, a couple hundred times. And eventually you come to a place where you've done it so much where you kind of forgot what you were doing, and in the meantime, your entire life has changed because you are no longer completely a prisoner to the thoughts that enter your mind. And we can use another example in relationships, whereas if we're always used to accepting less, if we're always used to sort of shutting ourselves down and not speaking our mind, not, I guess, voicing our truth, then when we're confronted with any sort of interpersonal situation, are we going to sort of cower in the same way that we have before? Or are we going to uncomfortably and awkwardly speak our truth and stand up for what we believe in? And those are sort of the two pathways that are always going to present themselves. And I've mentioned this again, I've mentioned this before, and it's the unconscious path versus the conscious path. And the conscious path is always going to be uncomfortable. It's always going to require something different of you. And whenever we do something different, this is where a lot of people turn backwards because they assume that because it feels weird, that it's not working, because it feels awkward, because it's not sort of flowing very easily, that it feels awkward. Some things will flow, some things will come about in a very aligned and, synchronistic manner. But for the most part, a lot of the practices that are really going to change our personal experience of life are going to be the ones where at first they were very difficult to implement, where it felt tense, it felt weird, it didn't feel like we were being ourselves. But of course not. If we were always being ourselves, then we would always be stuck in the version of ourselves that was miserable and anxious and overthinking in the first place. So seek out experiences that will force you to live in the present moment. And I know this is a sort of counter advice to the typical guidance that is given, which is, be present anywhere. And that is also the case. I do agree with that. But I have found something quite radical and quite extensive that can accelerate your healing journey. And that is to seek experiences that force you to be present. And what I mean by this is, if you're going out of your comfort zone, if you're doing something that isn't familiar with people that, you know, don't provide much comfort, that don't provide much of a soft landing, in everything you say or however you're moving about. It offers you a sort of mental resilience that if you can be present there, you will have an easier time being present as a result of that experience. Let me rephrase that. You will have an easier time being present in easier moments, the more you are willing to push the needle into being present in difficult moments. And this is something that people don't want to do, and I don't blame them for it. How can we blame anybody for not wanting to go experience discomfort? But if we don't continue to push that forward, if we don't continue to sort of move in that direction, constantly being on the offensive of our life instead of just allowing life to determine when there's going to be discomfort, then we're going to continue living the unconscious path. And that's what it comes down to. We can't let life tell us when there's going to be discomfort. Of course, sometimes that will happen, but for the most part, if we can seek out opportunities in our life where we think to ourselves, imagine if I can experience that situation, if I can be in that environment and I felt no anxiety, I felt no sense of, you know, overthinking or anything like that. Well, that thought, that hopeful perspective that you have, it is possible. And the more you're willing to push yourself into living that truth in those environments, in those situations, the more that hopeful thought actually becomes a reality. And what sorry for a little bit of a stutter, but what keeps people stuck is the fact that they believe that this idea of them not being anxious in the very situations that cause them the most anxiety, they believe that idea, that framework is so far out, so far away that it's impossible. But we should use the word impossible very, very lightly, very gently, because when it comes to the human mind, very, very much is possible. And it is 100% possible for you to feel no anxiety in anxiety induced situations that have made you feel that way in the past. And I guess we can start to think of a counter argument for that if we would like. That's what our thoughts love doing best. Whenever there's a hopeful perspective, whenever there's immediate growth that can be seen and that can be felt, our thoughts love to add a counter argument to validate our suffering and our misery in a, more comfortable way. And that's just the reality of it. We can't pity ourselves to the degree that we're just going to allow our mind to dictate, where we can be confident, where we can be empowered, and when we should hide away, when we should run back into isolation. So any excuses that your mind is making, and I'm saying your mind and not you because you are the awareness that chooses whatever belief systems to unfold and to exist. You are the awareness that chooses which thoughts to give power to. So I'm not going to allow the personification and the identity of, doubt and of a sort of negative viewpoint to exist as a truth and exist as a solid framework. Are you going to allow the conditions that your mind has set sort of naturally, the cards that you've been dealt, are you going to allow that to determine where you can be confident, where you can be anxiety free, where you can feel at peace, and where you can be happy? That information that we've picked up on, the amount of wisdom that we learn, we can realize it, but realizing it isn't the same as embodying it. When we practice it in life and then we actually see with our very own eyes how life starts to present itself differently as a result, now that's a sort of spiritual epiphany within itself. Because you'll see the way you carry yourself is going to make an utter difference on the way that you're treated by other people and the way that you're treated by the environments and situations that you're going to sort of run into in life. And here's an important note that I think is worthy of mentioning. When we say that, a lot of people will say, you are your greatest teacher. And the reason for that is because whatever stands in your way of being present, whatever stands in your way of enjoying your life, that is your curriculum. That is the sort of textbook that you've been handed in living your life. So, whatever difficulties you have within yourself that you have to overcome, don't compare it to anyone else because that is your assignment. Overcoming your inner difficulties is your sort of school. That is your guiding principle. And in overcoming those things, you will become the best version of yourself and come into your highest alignment. It's all set up in that same sort of framework. There's no point in comparing our suffering with other people's. We can't put ourselves in the exact same shoes as another. And we can't invalidate the struggles of one because another struggles more. There will always be someone who struggles and suffers more than you, and there will always be someone who struggles and suffers less than you. All we can do is realize what is standing in our way of enjoying life and simply and gracefully move in a way where we can overcome that. So if it's thoughts, we overcome thoughts. If it's anxiety, we overcome anxiety. If it's our traumas, we overcome our traumas. Whatever it may be, and whatever techniques we may use, we come to a place of awareness where we realize that the psychological cards that we've been dealt, that's not our finish. That's not our destiny. It's actually the complete opposite. In realizing that everything we've been dealt, our anxieties, our thoughts, whatever else, those cards that we've been dealt, that's actually our birth. It's our rebirth. You can call it our spiritual birth when we actually realize that. When we realize that we are the curriculum and that everything that is holding us back, everything that is keeping us trapped within ourselves, that is the literal roadmap. The roadmap is you. You don't have to conquer the world. You don't have to master the world. As a result of learning from your own experiences, as a result of mastering yourself and overcoming your own difficulties, everything else becomes quite clear. Other people and communicating and things like that become much more clear. Your passion and what you want to do with your life becomes much more clear. Because a lot of times we don't even realize it at an unconscious level. We are still maneuvering our way through fear, through anxiety, and through all these past experiences that we've allowed to define us. We are allowing all of that to influence our decision making. And our decision making is what's going to create those little pathways in which we finally align with what we want. So, coming back to the topic at hand, detach your reliance on the information you're taking to change your life. If you're always looking for that new book, if you're always looking for that new teacher or that new video, that's okay. You can watch and read these things and learn from these things. It's completely fine. But don't think that one of those things is going to inherently change your life more than anything that you do in your life, which requires you to take initiative and overcome an inner difficulty. That will always change your life more than anything else. Putting yourself out there, going out of your comfort zone, overcoming a fear, or sitting through an anxiety, whatever it may be. If you take the initiative, if you sit through the discomfort and move through the uncertainty of overcoming that challenge, that will change your life. And that's a guarantee. That's an absolute guarantee. Because when we're making movements, when we're creating ripples in life, life responds, reality responds. That's just the nature of life. And we think we've changed so much as a result of the books we've read and of the information we've taken. But if someone who knew you before all of this visited you, how much would they be able to notice? Maybe you think a lot, but maybe they think not so much. And more importantly, it's imperative that we're not trying to prove that we've changed through our words. Words are a less efficient mechanism than actions and state of being. When we're confident in the change that we've ensued and we've seen results in our life, we don't even have to tell people. So when someone sees you after a long time and you are, you only want to talk about spiritual things, you only want to have deep conversations about psychology and about how reality is a system and we can manipulate it and manifestation, all these different things. If you only want to talk about that, that's not a sign of change. That's simply a result of a shift of attention. That's it. You've only shifted your awareness onto a different topic. When any practice really comes to fruition is when our actions change and we become confident in those actions. We don't have to go around screaming to the town that we've changed. Think about when, you know, you see someone after a long time and they've truly changed. There's this sort of performative way that we all kind of know, and no one's going to call anyone out for it, and you're not going to probably spend too much time thinking about it, but you can kind of tell when someone is over explaining and speaking a lot about the change that they've quote unquote undergone and all the changes in their life and all these things, and you kind of sit there and you take it all in and you say, that's great, and you're happy for them, and all of that sort of jazz, but it's still the same old person that you're talking to. And that's not necessarily or inherently a bad thing, but they are the same person. just with different clothes, with a different attitude, with a different sort of position in the world, whatever it may be. And that's not inherently wrong. You know, we don't have to change, but if it's required from us, if we need to feel the satisfaction of overcoming those anxieties and difficulties, then we do have to change. Because maybe that person didn't have to overcome the same things that you did. So the change might look a little bit different, but it's not the actual change. Think about what happens when you see someone after a while and you notice real change. Maybe a change in demeanor, a change in attitude. Maybe they're not fussing about plans and they're not, trying to control everything and they're not, the same type of loud, energetic, whatever it may be, or maybe they were quiet and now they are loud and energetic, whatever it may be, there's a switch in energy that you can see. They're not trying to prove to you that they've changed. They're just being themselves, unapologetically. And when they're being themselves in front of you, you can see, wow, this person is different. And by the way, this can be for good or for bad. Maybe you see someone after a while and you can tell that they've been spending too much time alone. Maybe you can even tell that they're going through something. This isn't an invitation to overstep your bounds. You can offer guidance, you can offer help, whatever it may be. That's a different topic. But you can see and you can feel the change at an unconscious level. And you could see whatever information that they've been taking in, another person, whatever information, whether it be positive or negative, they've implemented that change because their energy is different now, whether for better or for worse. So the next time you encounter a specifically profound piece of information or knowledge or wisdom, whatever you want to call it, don't bet on you realizing and you coming to a realization on changing your life. Don't bet on that, because that's how a lot of, I like to call it modern day spiritualists. That's how a lot of, modern day open-minded, knowledge-seeking people become very, very trapped, because they believe that the information itself is going to change their life rather than the actions that they take as a result of learning that information. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's it for today. Let me know what you guys want to hear next or who you want me to talk to. I want to get some more guest episodes going as well. Other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. Oh yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe as always. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you. Other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.